Ladies and gentlemen, stop putting the mute button on. Welcome to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Well, today is PFF Day, and we're going to stay true to that. I know I mentioned the Malik thing. We will discuss that. I don't know if we're going to have time today. Probably not. I want to do it kind of thoroughly. I don't know how many of you actually care about it and don't, but it's something that we're going to have to discuss, at least just informationally, in terms of the contract situation, his as well as Jordan's and everything else, and just kind of get that all squared away so we're aware of the situation. Before we get into that, I should mention that Kamal, Haddon, and Jordan Riley had season-ending injuries. Pretty wild to have guys that, again, you go back to the 2010 thing, and it's like, oh, there's a lot of injuries, and guys step up. Well, we have guys come in and try to step up, and even they go down with injuries. So Matt LaFleur also said he hasn't decided on whether or not he'll rest. I still think it's the right thing to do. I understand how bad it is to go on that big of a losing streak, but you cannot risk losing players. You just can't. Asked about what went wrong with the defense after reviewing the tape a little bit. He said too many misalignments and misassignments, guys not lining up in correct technique, line stunts with some guys going the right way and some guys going the wrong way. Called it baffling because it hasn't been a trend this season. The problem is it kind of is. And what I mean by that is this specific thing might not be a trend, but it's always something. It's always some baffling thing that I just don't understand it because we've practiced it. Against the Bears, it was Romeo Doubs. I just don't understand it. We practiced that all week. Now we got this. I don't understand it. We practiced it all week. I don't know why this is happening. I don't either, dude. I don't either. But anywho, let's take a look at the old PFFs and see what they had to say after reviewing the tape. On offense, we had some guys that really, really showed up. Most did not, and many were just downright bad. Only 5 players were 70 or higher, and that's granting Emmanuel Wilson at a 69.9, which I think is fair. Jordan Morgan, finally get an offensive lineman to play well. It's Jordan Morgan, had an 80 grade. We'll get into the specifics on that, but it's very good. And then it's the 3, although you guys weren't there. It was during our live. We kind of went through this. Romeo Doubs, 83. Christian Watson, 91. Malik Willis, 96. I don't know the last time a Packers quarterback had a 96 PFF grade. One of the most remarkable things I've seen. And so there is a massive war right now on social media and otherwise with this whole Malik thing. And if you dare question anything, then you are whatever. Look, man, you can't have a guy play as consistently elite as Malik and not have the conversation. It's not a super worthwhile conversation in terms of, like, we kind of know what's going to happen. But to just play it off like it's stupid and Malik's not, like, the problem is everyone's so protective of Jordan that they're being dismissive of Malik. That's the issue I have. You're just not allowed to talk about it because it could be offensive to Jordan. It's not about Jordan. It's about Malik. So anywho, unbelievable performance, a 93 passing grade and an 87 rushing grade, all rolled up into one. Now, on the average front, and these are all low 60s, Jaden Reed 63, Bo Melton 62, Wiley 62, Donovan Jennings 61, and Dontavian Wicks 60. Below average, Anthony Belton, which I will take as an upgrade, although the pass blocking sucked. Jacob Monk, who apparently played 6 snaps, 58. Matthew Golden, 57. Darian Kennard. Actually, you know what? We'll get into the bad category. Usually under 55 I would call bad. And this is horrifically bad. Darian Kennard, 53. We'll get into why I say it's horrifically bad. Oh, my Lord, these grades. Give me a second to digest what I'm looking at here. My goodness. Oh, all right. Anyways, we'll get there when we get there. Chris Brooks, 52. Luke Musgrave, 51. Below a 50, Josh Jacobs, 48. Drake Dabney, 47. Rasheed Walker, 43. Clayton Tune, 38. Sean Ryan, 37. And Aaron Banks, 33. My two favorite guys on this offense, Sean Ryan and Aaron Banks, just snuggling there on the bottom. Going to be doing a Bears hate watch, by the way, here. I did bet on the Bears just because, I mean, it just feels right, you know, little hedge bet. Wouldn't mind watching them get stomped out here, but, you know, I feel like things are just going poorly, so that's what I should expect. All right, getting into the passing here, Malik Willis, 18 of 21. He had a 100% adjusted completion rate. 100%, meaning 100% of his passes were accurate. Ridiculous. 288 passing yards, 13.7 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 2 big-time throws, which is 9.1%, 0 turnover-worthy plays, and a 134.6 NFL passer rating. He was under pressure nearly 50% of his dropbacks, which is freaking pathetic. 48%. He was 7 of 8, obviously 100% adjusted completion, but 7 of 8 for 118 yards, 86 PFF grade, 76 passing grade. When he was kept clean, which was 52% of the time, he was 11 of 13, 170 yards, and a touchdown, 96 grade, 94 passing grade, 144.4 passer rating. Bears so far have 2 possessions, 0 first downs, 7 points, of course. Looking at our wide receiver, Christian Watson had an 89 grade, Romeo 80, Emmanuel Wilson 71, Reed 62, Bo 62, Golden 61, Wicks 60, Wiley 60, Jacobs 58, and Chris Brooks 39, which makes sense. He had 2 targets and a drop, so that's how that goes. Looking at how many yards per route run, Christian Watson nearly 6 yards per route run. That's crazy. He ran 19 routes and had 113 yards and a touchdown. Romeo Doubs was at 3.65, Dontavian Wicks at 3.5, Bo Melton at 2.83, Jaden Reed at 2.28. That's all real good stuff. There were 3 listed drops. Christian Watson had 1, Bo Melton had 1, and Chris Brooks had 1. I do remember each of those. Watson with a 158.3 passer rating when targeted. It's good stuff, man. Rushing, Malik with an 87, Wilson with a 67, Clayton Tune 57, Josh Jacobs 53. Jacobs had 0.8 yards per route run. I mean, I'm just going to keep saying it. This offensive line is the worst freaking thing ever. I have less faith in our offensive line than our defense after that performance. Not even 1 yard. You know what's worse? He had 1.25 yards after contact and still had less than a yard per carry. Absolutely horrifying. We didn't run the ball a ton, so you do tend to get some more crazy numbers when you only carry the ball 4 times, but I mean, good Lord, man. Then we get to the offensive line. The thing that has been the scourge of my freaking existence for this team. Touchdown, baby. Let's go 49ers. Bro, I want you to bury the Bears, man. Please bury the Bears. Left tackle Rasheed Walker had a 44 run blocking grade and a 37 pass blocking grade. Darian Kennard came in for 6 plays at left tackle and had a 3 pass blocking grade. Remarkable. Aaron Banks, my best friend in the world at left guard, had a 44 run blocking grade and a 15 pass blocking grade. My contempt for Aaron Banks knows no bounds. Donovan Jennings came in for 6 snaps at left guard, had a 77 pass blocking grade. At center, Sean Ryan, my second favorite person on this team, had a 52 run blocking grade and a 23.5 pass blocking grade. 23.5. This is the worst performance I've ever seen. Anthony Belton, 62 run blocking grade, which is nice, but a 46.6 pass blocking grade. Jordan Morgan at right tackle, which just seems to be the thing. Morgan should be a tackle. 84 pass blocking grade, 75 run blocking grade. That's as good as Zach Tom has been doing at right tackle. Not saying Jordan Morgan is as good as Zach Tom. I'm saying he's a tackle. I'm saying Rashid has completely given up on wanting to get any kind of a contract from the Packers. So next year, I want Jordan Morgan as our left tackle and Zach Tom as our right tackle, and that's the end of it. Elton Jenkins is our center, and we got to figure out what the heck we're going to do at guard. Hopefully Belton can step up in the right guards. Banks, good Lord, man. But outside of Jordan Morgan, the pass blocking grades, again, were 46, 23, 15, and 36. That's horrifying. We'll take a break and we'll be right back. Defensive side was arguably worse. They didn't have nearly the top end. There were 2 players that graded out as good. Kamal Haddon, who is out for the year and only played 6 snaps, and Lucas Van Ness. I'm glad Van Ness is back. I'm glad that he's continuing to play really good football. Probably not good enough to drag this entire defense, especially the entire team, through the playoffs, but I guess we'll see. Of the 20 players, 7 were average or above. Those 7 include Rashawn Gary, who continues to be touted as the worst player in history, despite never really being. Keyshawn Nixon, Kingsley Enagbare, Edgerrin Cooper, Nate Hobbs, and then Kamal and Van, who are the 2 good players. Below average, you have Tyron Hopper, Javon Bullard, Xavier McKinney, Carl Brooks. In the bad category, Evan Williams, Colby Wooden, Warren Brinson, Carrington Valentine. Below 50, in the really bad category, is Jordan Riley, out for the year. And then in the terrible category, below a 40, Isaiah McDuffie, Quentin Bohanna, Brenton Cox Jr., and dead last, Quay Walker. Looking specifically at run defense grades, the below 55, Wooden, Hobbs, Riley. Below a 50, Valentine, Brinson, McDuffie, Brenton Cox, Nixon, Walker, and then Bohanna. It cracks me up how every single time we go out and get a 320, 330-pound guy to be that run defender, they're always our worst run defenders. Every time. The only 2 graded as good, Van Ness and Kamal Haddon. Pass rush. On the below 55 side, Wooden, Cooper, and McDuffie. On the good side, Van Ness, Quay Walker, Warren Brinson. Brinson didn't have any pressures, but they seemed to like whatever he did. I don't know. Coverage. You had Valentine at 53. In the bad, McDuffie at a 42. In the real bad, Quay Walker at a 36. On the positive side, Nixon 74, Cooper 75, Nate Hobbs 86. So that's great news. Looking at some of the coverage stats. Xavier McKinney, 1 target, 0 receptions. Evan Williams, 1 target, 1 reception, 8 yards. Javon Bullard, 1 target, 1 reception, 6 yards. All of that is perfectly fine. Carrington Valentine, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 23 yards, and a touchdown. That's not great. McDuffie, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 10 yards. That's perfectly fine. Cooper, 2 targets, 1 reception, 0 yards. That's fantastic. Keyshawn, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 16 yards, and a pass breakup. That's not bad at all. His biggest issue was run defense and tackling in this game. And then Quay Walker, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 44 yards. On the, let's look at a couple other stats here. Stops. Players with 1 stop on the defense. Rashawn, Nixon, Bohanna, McDuffie, and Haddon with 2. McKinney, Wooden, Cooper. Brooks had 3. Enagbare and Walker had 4. Lucas Van Ness had 5 stops. Missed tackles. Valentine, McKinney. There's so many. There's 11 missed tackles. Valentine, McKinney, Nixon, McDuffie, Williams, Enagbare, Wooden, Brinson, and Bullard each had 1. Edgerrin Cooper had 2. So just a nice, even distribution of missed tackles across the team. All right, looking at pressures. There were only 14 pressures in this game. Let's see. The only guy that had double-digit attempts with 0 pressures was Colby Wooden with 14. Jordan Riley had a pressure on 4 attempts, which is really impressive. Carl Brooks had 1 pressure on 16 attempts. As always, you're kind of looking, there's a touchdown for the frickin' Bears. Nice coverage, you jag off. 1 pressure on 16 attempts is not what you're super looking for. Quay Walker had a pressure on just 2 attempts. Isaiah McDuffie had 2 pressures on 3 attempts, which is awesome. Then you had Rashawn Gary with 3 pressures on 14 attempts, which is incredible. You had Enigbare with 3 pressures on 16 attempts, which is incredible, and Van Ness with 3 pressures on 16. So Van Ness, Enigbare, and Rashawn each had 3 pressures with 16, 16, and 14 attempts. I just want to reiterate, I don't know how we can sit here and say Van Ness had a great day and Rashawn had a terrible day as a pass rusher. He was, as an edge rusher, by pressure rate, not including the inside linebackers, he was our best pass rusher. Again. So I don't fully understand where all the hatred for him comes from. My only issue seems to be the fact that they just don't ever want to put him on the field. If you look at the total snaps, the edge rusher that was on the field the most was Kingsley, 60 snaps. Rashawn, 34. It's like half the amount of times Kingsley was out. Van Ness, 47. Brinson and Rashawn Gary with 34. That's my issue. It's not that when he's out there, he's not doing stuff. It's that he's not out there. Might as well just do special teams right away. On the negative side, Brenton Cox, Matt Orzich, Edgerrin Cooper, Emmanuel Wilson, and Oladapo all had somewhat bad grades. On the positive side, Nate Hobbs, Zane Anderson, Isaiah McDuffie, and Lucas Van Ness. And then Aaron Mosby had an 82 as a very good grade. All right. Well, we obviously have a ton of time, so I don't know how we got through that so freaking fast. Why don't we take a break here, and we will do the Malik thing. We'll have a little conversation about Malik. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so let's start with this as far as the Malik conversation, because the question for a lot of people is essentially, I guess it depends who you ask, how strongly the question is posed. But let's say it ranges from just curious what our options are to screw Jordan Love, this guy should be our starting quarterback. So that's kind of the range that we're going to be playing in for the last segment here. So just for the sake of argument, let's assume that the Packers decided that we like Jordan Love, he's very good, but Malik is like Jordan Love with Lamar's leg. Let's take it a step further. He's actually better. He understands the offense better. He's more accurate. He's a better decision maker. He does all the things better, and he can run. All right, that's the experiment here. And so the easiest path forward, and this is also why it's ridiculous to not have the discussion at least for 5 seconds, because there's other things at play. There's a massive contract that Jordan Love has that you, at least from a standpoint of not knowing yet, would want to know, could we get out of it? But then also, you'd have to realize that if we were to move to Malik, we'd be moving on from Jordan. And if we move on from Jordan, that means trading Jordan, which means not only do we recoup the first-round draft picks that we lost, it means we would recoup that and more. And beyond that, we'd be trading them to a team probably inside the top 10. Meaning we would be getting our first-round picks back, the potential for them both to be in the top 10 relatively high. One of them is pretty much guaranteed because you're probably going to trade to somebody in the top 10, whether they go back or not. Decent chance, depending on what team and how bad they are. That's, in its totality, the story. It's not just, is Malik better? It's, do we think he could be as good and save more money and get some really great picks and all that kind of stuff? From that standpoint, it's actually rather appealing. Again, I know that this is nails on a chalkboard to people who don't want to have the discussion because it's, insulting to Jordan or whatever the thing may be. Yeah, oh well. It's probably stupid to talk about moving on from Matt LaFleur too, but we're going to at least talk about it as a thought experiment. So really the only questions would have to come down to, what is Malik really? Number 2 is, do the Packers even care In other words, let's say they look at it and they're like, yeah, we genuinely think he's a very good quarterback. However, we paid Jordan, and that's our decision, and we don't care about anybody else. We're not even going to entertain it because we paid Jordan. That's also probably a reality. But again, that's question number 2. And then number 3 is there anything in the contract with Jordan that would even make it possible? Now, Ken Ingalls was obviously quick to jump on this, and so I'll read what he wrote first. He said, for those of you who need to hear this, there is no scenario where the Packers trade Jordan Love before 2028 when they gain cap space. No, the Packers cannot and will not trade Jordan Love and sign Malik Willis this offseason. His 2026 cap hit is $36.1 million. 2026 dead cap if traded before the 5th day of free agency, $48.5 million, $12.4 million cap. 26 dead cap if traded after, $88 million, $51.9 million cap loss. Don't ask about releasing. That's insane, and the numbers get significantly worse. No, the dead cap's the dead cap cannot get better outside of Jordan Love taking a pay cut, and he won't. He has 2 massive guaranteed mid-contract option bonuses, which are already pre-spread out for cap purposes. If anything, the Packers will be forced into an extension before the 2028 season to try to drop the cap hit, but best case will still be around 40 to 45 million range on the cap and create another dead cap mountain into the 2030s. I skipped a lot because it's kind of irrelevant. I'm not asking about 27, 28, or 30. I'm asking about 2026 specifically. That's really all that I care about. For the most part, the bottom line here is that you're talking about a $100 million dead cap hit. Now, if you do a post-June 1, you split this in half, it maybe becomes a little bit more reasonable, but it is a heavy price to pay. Now, to call it impossible is to somewhat look at it as from, in sunk cost fallacy terms, the money that would be lost is money that's already been paid. By keeping him, you're just going to continue paying him. But this is a desperation move. I mean, this is bigger than what we did when we decided, even though it's massive, we're moving on from Aaron Rodgers. That was like $72 million or something like that. And so I would assume it would be impossible to take on roughly a $100 million dead cap hit in a year. So you would have to do a post-June 1. And a post-June 1 is maybe a touch more doable, but really only in 2026, because in 2026 it would be a $30 to $35 million cap hit, which is doable. The problem is in 2027, you have about a $65 million cap hit, which is really not doable, especially for a quarterback that you don't have. So this is obviously the biggest hurdle that we have. In addition to, again, if we kind of go backwards and look at it, would the Packers ever move on from Jordan Love? The answer is no. And the reason is what you heard from Brian Gutekunst already. When you have a really good quarterback, you just don't let him go. And you say, well, what about Malik? We don't have a big enough sample size with Malik. I mean, I don't know that we have a big enough sample size with Jordan. We're kind of just getting to the point where it's like, I think I know what we have in Jordan, but it's hard to know. I don't know 100% what we have in Jordan. I can't know what's going to happen with Malik. What happens when he settles into a system? What happens when he becomes a starting quarterback and has to play 4 quarters consistently? What happens when other defensive coordinators start to game plan for him specifically and try to find ways to mitigate the Malik offense as opposed to the Jordan Love offense? We don't have the answer to that question. So he's a bigger unknown. He probably has a shorter shelf life, although it's tough to say because Jordan's already had a couple injuries. But mobile quarterbacks like that, and we're seeing Malik already injured, probably not going to have as long of a shelf life. He's also going to need a big contract. If he is the guy that you think he is, you're going to have to end up paying him. Maybe not this first time around, but he's going to end up taking a moderate short-term contract, And in a year or two, if he is what you think he is, he's going to get a bigger contract than Jordan did. So the cost savings and all that is kind of nonsense because everybody gets paid. Everybody's going to get paid eventually. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking the question because, again, it's not about Jordan, it's about Malik. And I think Malik has been unbelievable. And I think, maybe he'll go somewhere and he'll end up being kind of a bad quarterback or just kind of a meh quarterback. It's entirely possible. But the way he's playing right now is out of control. He is shockingly accurate. He's unbelievably fast. His decision-making is impeccable. It's been phenomenal to watch him play. The most frustrating thing, I think, for me is less to do with, man, we can't keep him and replace Jordan Love, and more to do with, it's too bad we can't get better compensation for him. The reality is he's not under contract, and so we can't trade him. I mean, he will not be under contract next year, and the trade deadline for this year is already over. So when next year begins, he will not be under contract. The only way to trade him would be to sign him, but that doesn't make it. If we're gonna pay him that money, we would just keep him. We're not going to pay him as much money as other teams would be willing to pay him. And so the only real good news here is that when Malik eventually gets signed elsewhere, and we'll see what that figure looks like, we'll get a decent compensatory pick. But the best it could possibly be is a third-round pick, and that's kind of the problem. The best compensatory pick you can get is third round. So there is no first or second round option here. The best is a third round. I think it was Andy Herman kind of speculate. He thinks it's probably going to be a fourth-round pick. I think you can assume it's somewhere in the third to fifth round range. It really just kind of comes down to how much a quarterback-needy team is willing to pay. If there's a team a little bit further down in the draft order, and I'm not in the NFL draft stuff as much as I need to be, and I will be starting that very, very soon, going hard and heavy after it. But let's say you're a team outside of that range and you don't think you can trade up. You desperately need a quarterback, but you just don't have that guy. A lot of teams, what they'll do is they'll just go get the quarterback. They'll do the Kirk Cousins thing, or they'll do the Justin Fields thing, or the Malik thing in this case. And they'll go get that guy and say, okay, fine, it's done for now. We've answered that question. It's not the best option that we would have liked to have done, but we've answered the question. Now we can focus our first round pick, our number 7, number 8, number 9 pick or whatever, on that, edge rusher that we want, or that corner, or whatever the case is, that offensive tackle. If Malik ends up being more of just a, we'll see. They sign him and another guy to be the backup that maybe could start. We'll see how it goes. You're probably looking more at the 4th, 5th round kind of a deal. And you got to remember that these things all kind of cancel out too. So depending on what we end up doing in free agency, I know everybody think, well, we're not going to do anything because we never do and we're not going to have any money, which is what everybody has said since the dawn of man. There's just, fine, okay, whatever. That seems to be the reality. I don't see a third scenario worth talking about as much as I want to just explore all options. I don't see really any scenario where Malik ends up staying as a backup here. I think the Packers would be willing to pay a pretty decent price to keep him here, but it would be a decent backup quarterback amount. And I don't think the Packers would be the highest bidders because somebody out there is going to at least consider paying him enough to potentially be a starting quarterback. You know what I mean? You look at some of the bad quarterbacks that are out there right now and look at what Malik is doing, especially with his arm and his legs put together. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he stays. So we're not trading Jordan. I would bet massive quantities of money on that. We're not going to pay him to be a backup. I would bet slightly smaller quantities of money, but also still a decent chunk of money. How is everybody wide open for the Bears? I hate this freaking team. Ben Johnson is the worst person on earth. He's like literally Hitler. I don't know. It's what the kids say. You just have to mildly dislike somebody for them to be Hitler, I think. So yeah, enjoy it while it lasts, I guess. Because I can't currently see a scenario where he ends up staying on the Packers next year. But it was a fantastic pickup by Brian Gutekunst, and very, very good job by Matt LaFleur to craft an offense that works with Malik and to do it efficiently and effectively, consistently, and also to train and cultivate Malik. Makes me sick to think he's going to walk out the door, but it's the only thing I can imagine. So, anywho, how has it only been 30 minutes? I feel like I've been talking for 4 hours. This is the weirdest podcast ever. All right, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.